You're live, Your Worship.
All right, good evening and thank you, Clerk Helmke. Welcome again, all members of council, members of our staff, and members of the community that are joining us. This is the Clearview Township Council meeting for Monday, December the 13th, 2021. And council has just met in an in-camera session, which began at 4:30. We wrapped that up and now we're commencing with the regular agenda at 5:30 p.m. And so members of council, we'll get started. We've got a pretty good agenda with some public meetings in here and several items to wrap up our 2021 year. Council, the agenda for this at this time, I have recommendation be it resolved. The Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated December 13, 2021 as presented. Can I have any mover and seconder on this motion, please? Deneen and Lamers. Deneen and Lamers, any questions on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. Just to acknowledge that, again, we've had some internet difficulties. So if members of council turn their cameras on and off during the meeting, they're not leaving. They're still here. It's just we've had some bumps in our internet here today. So just letting everybody know that that could happen. Council, disclosure, pecuniary interest, and general nature thereof. Is there anybody with any disclosures? Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Public Works, item PW 042-2021 Southeast Stayner wastewater financing. I have an interest in that information as I'm a resident of the street.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for acknowledging that. And Madam Clerk will record that and we'll acknowledge that. Is there anybody else with anything further? All right. Interestingly enough, I see the hand up on the fire chief payment. Did you have something you wanted to add at this time, or is that hand up inadvertently?
Nope, sorry, Your Worship, inadvertently.
Okay, thank you, sir. Always good to have you join the meeting, though. Thank you, Chief. All right, members of we're all smiling. All right, members of council, we'll move on to item number 4, which is our public participation period. We did have 5 contacts in regards to public participation for the council meeting portion of tonight's meeting. Just before we get started, I want to acknowledge that there is a public meeting tonight, which is in regards to the budget, and there were several items that were sent in as part of that. So that'll be part of the budget process in the public meeting portion of the meeting. So at this time, please be advised that comments and views expressed under the public participation period are not the views of Clearview Township Council or the administration. And so I'm going to start off with item number 4.1. David Konashko, I believe is how you pronounce your name. Sorry if I got it wrong. David asked a question in regards to the Clearview Airbnb policy. In fact, we don't actually have a policy. We just currently the Airbnbs are actually it's a prohibited thing. We do have the B&B policy. We don't have a thing called an Airbnb policy, but I do acknowledge your letter and your comments in your letter. Discussions with our staff indicate that we will be going into a public review of our official plan, and that may be an item that could be discussed in the official plan review. If members of the public or the council would like to bring it up at that time, that is something that can be brought forward at that time to help assist you answer that question. I would encourage you to reach out and speak to members of the planning department to discuss your specific current concerns about this, as there are a BNB policy is in place, and perhaps that would help you out as well. Okay, so thank you for that. I have item number 4.2 and 4.3. I'd like to just acknowledge that Diane and Gary Russell, as well as Amy Shannon, asked questions about the OCIF funding. And actually, they were referring to Sunnydale Street. There's a project on Sunnydale Street. And so I acknowledge that they've asked some questions about OCIF funding. I did a little research on the OCIF funding and had a conversation with our CAO, Mr. Ferguson. So I'd like to defer to John for a moment, if you would give us an outline on the terms of what the OCIF funding, Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, is all about and how it impacts the Township of Clearview. So Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, Your Worship. They haven't come up with all the criteria as of yet, but in their letter to us and to all the municipalities, they state that the above changes mean the additional funding will address communities' needs to renew and rehabilitate their core infrastructure. and better support small and medium-sized municipalities. So the key component of that statement is that it appears that it has to be existing infrastructure. We will see clarification as we go forward, but I believe that's what it means. So the infrastructure on Sunnydale, the new sewer line is new infrastructure. So that's the slight difference with respect to this program. I would also like to add, and it's a good question, about receiving funding from the municipality for support of work on Sunnydale. And my understanding is in 2001, legislation did permit and does permit a municipality to do so. My understanding is that most municipalities don't, and Clearview Township has not in the past. And that's the most important issue here, is because if Clearview decided to do that, they would be setting a precedent. And it may very well leave the municipality in a legally precarious position with previous developments, something I'm not sure about. But that typically is the reason being is that most municipalities do not, and Clearview Township has not in the past. So I hope that helps answer that question.
Okay, if I may ask you a question that has to do with OCIF. So as you read the letter, which by the way, I have not received the letter from the ministry did go to our staff. It didn't come to the mayor or the members of the council. You indicate that it's for existing infrastructure or updating and renewing infrastructure. It's not new infrastructure.
It says needs to renew and rehabilitate their core infrastructure. It doesn't state it's for new infrastructure.
Okay.
Now it does say that they will talk to municipalities, their partners, about this. But the reason why I believe it's this way is they go on to state that the current replacement values, which means the current replacement value of your infrastructure, needs to be managed so that you have that asset management core. You know how old that infrastructure is and what would be the priority to replace. So again, this lends itself to saying it has to be existing infrastructure.
Okay. All right. Well, stay tuned. Thank you for that. And thank you to the three people who asked that question. All right. I'm going to go to 4.4, Judith Crawford and some other Clearview residents. They sent in quite a letter in regards to their opposition to the speed reductions. Judith, although there wasn't any specific question in there, I do want to acknowledge that you do represent more than just yourself on that. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate your input on that particular letter. And it's good information for this council. I see Mr. McKechnie's got his hand up. Do you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since this basically is in my ward, I'd like to respond to the letter, if I may, just to clarify a couple of items. It's it doesn't have anything to do with budget, so just to clarify a few items.
Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for the letter, and I'd like to respond to a couple of the concerns that because the three roads are in Ward 2, of which I'm the council representative. And I should also make the rest of council aware that despite being the representative for Ward 2, I was not invited to a meeting that the members of this group had with the mayor, the CAO, and the deputy director of public works. And I can only assume that my invitation was lost in the mail. So to your letter, Judith, and the rest of you, the business people, you were asking about whether we were catering to special interest groups. And as a councillor, I don't know what special interest groups you're referring to. If it's the cyclists, they get lots of blame put on them. But be assured that I, as the council representative for Ward 2, have not had a single request from any cycling organization. So I wanted to make that clear. I've not had a single request from any cycling organization. The vast majority of the requests I've had have been from residents that live on these roads, both primary homeowners and secondary homeowners. Now, you also ask why we didn't take a closer look at Centerline Road. And in Clearview's official plan, Centerline Road is an arterial road, whereas Fairgrounds Road, Concession 6 and Concession 10 are local roads. The official plan states that arterial roads, such as Centerline Road, are intended to carry through traffic at higher speeds and higher volumes. The local roads are not intended to carry through traffic. In fact, it says the official plan says that through traffic is to be discouraged. Local roads are low volume, low speed roads, primarily to be used by the residents on those roads. And that's on page either 174 or 176 of the official plan. Now, you make a reference to the traffic calming policy, and I know it's been discussed with your meeting. I don't believe it applies in this case. The traffic calming policy was brought to council in July of 2019. It was based on the Wasaga Beach's traffic calming policy. As a matter of fact, it is almost a word for word copy, cut and paste. Wasaga Beach is a town. It's a town with few rural roads. We are a township with, I don't know, 500 kilometers of rural roads. I saw that number one time, that we have 500 kilometers of rural roads. Wasaga Beach really has no rural roads, they're very few. Also, the traffic calming policy does not provide speed limit reductions as an option. It provides other options, but these cater to residential areas. So on July the 13th, 2020, in budget amendment number 3, this council acknowledged the traffic calming policy applies to settlement areas. It also acknowledged that the residents have become increasingly outspoken regarding safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and motor vehicles. Council therefore approved that a comprehensive traffic management study be conducted for our local rural roads.
Mr.
On May the
McKechnie.
25th, motion number 5, council strengthened its direction to staff by directing that the traffic management study include the consideration to lower speed limits within Clearview Township, and that these recommendations be included in the report pursuant to the findings of the comprehensive traffic management study. So in
Mr.
short,
McKechnie.
in conclusion, hear me out, your worship, hear me out. Council acknowledges that the traffic calming policy applies to the settlement areas. We had no policy for the rural roads, so we commissioned a comprehensive traffic management study that directed the lower speed limits be an option. We've spent 2 years on this. If council wishes to consult the public through a survey, we can do that. I am not opposed. I have no problem with consulting the public. However, as the traffic calming policy does not apply, a survey is not a mandatory requirement. However, once again, I'm not opposed if council decides we want to do it. So I just wanted, in conclusion, I trust this clarifies a few of the concerns that the group had. I was not a part of the meeting. I just wanted to make sure that everyone is has the feelings of the councillor for Ward 2, as these are the roads in my ward. Thank you.
The roads are in all the township, and so all members of council are just as engaged with this issue as everyone, councillor. And further, this is the public participation period. It's not a participation period for members of council. So I would ask council members to make sure that they, use their time in their ward reports to bring in these type of issues forward. So thank you. And while I do appreciate your comments,
the concerns in the letter.
I appreciate it. Absolutely. I'm just cautioning that this is the public participation period. All right. I did not expect that tonight, but thank you very much. Item 4.5
Well,
is
I expected to be invited to the meeting with my residents. So there you go.
Councillor, I'm quite sure there's lots of meetings that you've been to that I've not been invited to.
Yes, and I
Thank
keep you
you.
informed what has happened at them.
Thank you. Councillor, number 4.5, Gord Ziegel, he included a letter that was part of his presentation to us from the Federation of Independent Business in regards to speed limit reductions. And I also thank all those members who sent in their public participation and acknowledge that we have a public participation portal that's available on our website for all of our regular public council meetings. And please use the portal in communicating through the public participation portal. Members of council, there are no deputations or presentations at this time. And item 6 is our public meetings. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have 2 public meetings for tonight. There is going to be one about the bylaw revisions, as well as the public meeting regarding the 2022-2023 budget presentation. So we will get to those at 6:30 p.m. tonight, which is what the scheduled time is for those public meetings to be held. And so we look forward to those at that time. Council will move on to item number 7 of our agenda. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the minutes of the following council meetings as presented. November 22, 2021, November 25, 2021, which is a special council meeting. And then November 29, which is the budget workshop session 2021. Can I have a mover and seconder on the approval of the minutes? Mr. Broderick, Mr. Lamers, any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Now, so we're going to move to page 3 now. Business arising from the minutes. If there's any, does anybody have any business from the minutes that they'd like to bring up? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 9, which is communications from the mayor. There are 3 items. The first item is our closed session report. Members of council did meet at 4:30. We had a brief council meeting, and I do have a report to bring forward. The report actually is that there's a member's request. We have a member's request from Councillor Leishman. I have a motion that comes out of the in-camera session, and I'll look for a mover and seconder after reading. Be it resolved that council authorize an indefinite leave of absence from Clearview Council requested by Councillor Connie Leishman in accordance with section 259-1, item C of the Municipal Act 2001. You have a mover and seconder. Mr. Deputy Mayor, and then the Councillor Deneen. And I'll actually look for if there's any comments. I'll only comment that we did meet with Councillor Leishman. Councillor Leishman asked for this leave. She did ask for some privacy in regards to her concerns, and council agreed to bring forward this motion in open session. So at this time, I'll ask if there's any member of anything. Okay, seeing none. Yes, Councillor Deneen, go ahead.
I just wanted to say to all the people that are listening that we are really going to miss her. That's all.
Thank you. And I also look forward to reaching out and speaking to her every once in a while to get an update. So thank you. Members of council, nothing further? I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. For the interest of those in the public, Councillor Leishman did ask for privacy, but if you're genuinely concerned, she said that she would take phone calls to speak to you, but she has some concerns and she would, like to keep it to within her family, so to speak. And so if there's any questions about the motion, I'd ask you to reach out to the clerk of Clearview Township, Clerk Helmke. All right, council, item number 9.2. And then 9.3 are the 2 items remaining on communications from the mayor. First one is the AOR's trade show coming in 2022. Gosh, I wonder if they're actually going to host the thing. And then the NVCA board highlights for November. Is any questions or anything you'd like to add or anything concerned? I know that the AOR's group have tried to host this meeting, but both times been canceled because of the pandemic, and looks like they're aiming for something in June. So. All right, seeing none, then I'm going to ask for the be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive the communications from the mayor for information. Can I have a mover and seconder? Mr. Broderick, Mr. Walker, thank you. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. Council, we have the county reports for information. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add other than the county did have a little bit of a shutdown over the weekend for the some of the waste management facilities because of the high winds. They had to shut them down as materials were kind of blowing around in the yard and making it kind of a dangerous situation for people and staff to be in there during that high wind event. So that was the only, I understand that they're back reopened again, so everything's fine, but just a little cautionary thing that does happen during high winds at the waste management facilities. Deputy Mayor, have you got anything to add?
Not really. You guys, county council has already had their last meeting. Although we did have a meeting last week on our review, as you recall, you were there to attend that, and that's about it. Not a whole lot else. Like I said, we've finished our last meeting, so we'll be dealing with stuff in the new.
Absolutely, looking forward to 2022. All right, we have nothing then further on county reports. So we will go right to our ward reports. And let's see, who we're going to start with today. We're going to start with Councillor Walker. Hello, Robert. How are you doing?
Oh, Your Worship, thank you very much. Just a quick, of course, on November 25th, we had our Indigenous workshop. November 29th, we had our budget number 2 workshop. On December 1st, I had youth committee. Just a little update. We have for November and December, there were 75 activity kits and they were gone fairly quickly for both months. They have various activities planned for the new year. After looking at the numbers, providing, of course, we don't have a backward movement in with COVID to stop some of those activities. Then at December the 2nd for the tree lighting, and then December the 4th for the Santa Claus parade. And other than that, I just wish everybody Merry Christmas, Your Worship, and that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walker. It was good to see you at the Stayner tree lighting and your family. It was good to see you there. Councillor Broderick, you're next, and then Councillor Deneen. Go ahead, John Broderick.
Thank you, Your Worship. November the 25th, also attended the education session on Indigenous land acknowledgement. November 29th, attended the budget presentation and meeting. December 3rd, attended the Creemore tree lighting, and on December 4th, attended both the Stayner and Creemore Santa Claus parades. Unfortunately, I was otherwise detained for December the 2nd. That's it for me, Your Worship.
All right, thank you very much. It was fun at the Santa Claus parades. Thank you to both of you and Councillor Deneen for joining us there too. Councillor Deneen, you're next, and then Councillor Patterson. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make mention that my granddaughter thoroughly enjoyed riding along in the Santa Claus parade. A lot of the pictures, she looked pretty scared, but she really enjoyed it. And thanks for asking us to come along with that. Sunday evening, Nottawa was treated to the annual tractor parade, and I know that everybody was out. I saw people that I haven't seen in over a year, and it was really nice to see people out, and it was nice that the weather cooperated for them. Just wanted to make mention the Nottawa Hall has now officially had its first Christmas rental. Everything went off really well, and we're open for business for anybody that wants to come by and rent the facility. Thanks. Well, I guess with COVID protocol, but it's all open for business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you to the volunteers at all of our small halls that are working very diligently to get our halls open. Councillor Patterson, you're next, and then Councillor Lamers. So go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 items from the NVCA board meeting we had last Friday. The budget as presented to us was passed by the board. We also had a review of the June to November performance standards. Essentially, I'll just give you the cap, and I know the NVCA staff would be happy to discuss if there were any concerns. Essentially, a total of 378, actually it was higher than that, 382 permits were submitted by NVCA for their watershed. And Clearview had 30 total permits. And according to their performance measurement scheme, the timelines were met 100% of the time. There were no misses, and there were no clearances as well, which is a minor service they provide. So 30 out of 30. We did a review of the total performance for that half month, which is normal review for the board. There's 2 measurement schemes. One is the calc that they have themselves, measuring scheme, and Conservation Ontario some time ago decided to come up with a client services standards document, which is a little bit more stringent in some areas. On their own measurement, NVCA met 97.8% of the time, and on the Conservation Authority, the Ontario measurement, they were 91.6. So if there's ever any questions about this either matching your expectation, your residents' expectation, I would encourage you to ask for a consultation with the NVCA. I'd be happy to act as an intermediary. I've been interested in this since I joined the board, how we actually measure. So I'd be happy to assist if you wanted to do that. Thank you to the CAO. We did send a note back to the NVCA saying that the budget has been incorporated in the township 2022 proposed budget. But as John and I discussed, and I would ask this question now, but the answer can come later, if you like, is it our normal practice to approve by resolution that budget and include it in the budget? And if that's the case, then that might be something we do during our next budget session. But the numbers, as I understand it, Kelly's put in as received. Last thing, just in terms of an update, I always try to provide just a little bit of what's happening in the ward, and this is in no way intended to be a criticism of our staff, because I met with the staff on the equipment and told them if they have any concerns, ask them to either direct them to me or and I can provide them with the staff member. But we do get complaints, especially early in the year when it's a bit soft. And the problem we have on our sidewalk is, in our narrower sidewalks, different standard is we churn up some mud on top of the white snow. And it is a problem with narrow sidewalks and wide snowplows. Dan and I have talked about this for a long time, and there's no easy solution because it's expensive. But I think it's good to just remind everybody that generally we get a lot of praise for the snow removal we do, especially on the roads and even on the sidewalks. But there are some problem areas, and so I will continue to keep an eye on that. And that is my report.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Patterson, and thank you for your comments about the NVCA. It was good to have a nice presentation from the CAO and the president, or the chair, the chair of the NVCA. It was nice to have him participate in our budget presentation. Councillor Lamers is next, and then Councillor McKechnie. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Your Worship. On November 24th, we had a Brentwood Hall Board meeting. The 25th, we had an evening Hall Board meeting and a special council meeting. Evening and Brentwood are both starting to get rentals, which is nice to hear. People are trying to get out. The 29th, we had the budget meeting. The 30th, we had our first Winterama meeting. We're hoping to have a Winterama again this year in February. And I attended on December 4th, I attended the Creemore and the Stayner Santa Claus parades. We had a great turnout, both float wise and participants and standbyers. It's one of the biggest ones we've had in years. And then I'd like to thank all the people that sent in emails over the past week, concerned citizens. It was a long weekend trying to read all the emails that we received. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Lamers, and thank you again for joining us at the parades. Councillor McKechnie is next, and then the Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing to report, but I'd like to also echo Councillor Denise's thoughts. I'd like to wish Connie all the best, and we're all pulling for you, Connie. Looking forward to having you back at the council table, but don't come back until you're ready, and don't rush it. We can get along without you. We'll struggle along and try not to do too much damage until you get back. So all the best, Connie. We're pulling for you.
Thank you, Councillor McKechnie. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not a whole lot to report other than everything that everybody else has said. My regrets, I was not at the Santa Claus parade, but I was at all those other meetings and things that were described. I just wanted to thank all those who have been sending me numerous emails about the concerns about the traffic reduction and that. And it's really great to be hearing both sides of the story. And I'm thanking all who are sending me, and I appreciate. I'm unable to respond to everybody's email, but be assured I am reading them and taking it all into context.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. And yes, you were missed at the Santa Claus parades. There's no doubt, but it was good to have a good parade there. And thank you for your comments here about those letters. We certainly have been receiving quite a few. All right, Council. So at this time, I've got a few things I just want to mention. First of all, I want to mention the tree lighting ceremony in Stayner. Great success, although the weather was really kind of cold and windy. Santa Claus was there. There was a reindeer there. The kinsmen were there. There was dancing from the dance room. We had some vocalists join us. It was just a tremendously warm event, even though the wind was cold and rainy. So it was a really nice event, and I was really happy to be able to participate on your behalf and bring greetings to the residents that were there. The following night, I was able to attend the tree lighting ceremony in Creemore, where a similar kind of activity happened there. And one of the things I thought was quite nice is they had a little bit of a bonfire going on, kind of maintained and monitored by the firefighters that were there. So I thought that was really nice. And the tree lighting was a tremendous success in Creemore as well. Congratulations to the Tree Society, who are the volunteers behind that. And I had the opportunity to speak there and bring greetings and congratulations to volunteers across our whole township who continue to serve us every day. So it was really encouraging to see. Again, acknowledge the great work on the Santa Claus parades. I know, Councillor McKechnie, you attended the one in Singhampton. I know that there was another parade held in around the subdivision of Calling Woodlands. And then, as Councillor Deneen mentioned, there was the Santa Claus parade of tractors in beautiful downtown Ottawa. So that was a whole lot of fun. And I want to acknowledge those participants in the parade. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, no, I did not attend the Santa Claus parade in Singhampton.
Oh, I thought you were there. I'm sorry.
No one told me about it. So I was not informed that there was a parade. So
to be honest, I didn't know about it either. To be honest, I didn't know about it either.
I don't think I'm on the email loop or the on anybody's phone list or anything. So yeah.
You know, let's just assume that our invitation was lost in the mail there for both of us, because I wasn't aware of it either.
Doug, I'd never heard about the Calling Woodlands one either. So there you go.
Okay. Oh, it's a lot of fun. Sometimes we're the last to know. I do want to acknowledge for the Stayner and Creemore parades, we had a contribution by a local business operator. We all know him as Dean Fritz, the Pyro World guy. He contributed a little bit to our float with a little bit of pyrotechnics. And I know Councillor Lamers and Broderick both enjoyed that quite a bit. We had some fun with that. So that was great. Thanks to Dean for helping us out with that. And also down in Creemore, our MP Terry Dowdle joined us on our float, and I think he had the best time of all of us in Creemore. He certainly didn't, he, John? He just was shining on that parade. He enjoyed himself quite a bit. So it was quite nice to host our MP as well. The last thing I want to mention, yesterday was a very nice little event that I got the honor to attend, and that was the 99th birthday celebration for Ina Evans over at the Blue Mountain Manor. 99 years, she looks amazing. She's just as sharp as anything, and so it was great to visit with her and some of the residents at the home yesterday. So congratulations to her, and thank you to all the staff and crew that work over there at Blue Mountain Manor to keep our residents healthy and happy and safe. So good job to them. Council, at this time, we're going to move on. We've got, again, our public meetings are scheduled for 6:30. We still have a bit of time. We do have some items that we can deal with prior to the meeting. I'll bring your attention to item number 12. The first item is the building permit fee bylaw revision. I'm going to delay that item as one of the items in our public meeting is this discussion of the permits, the bylaw revisions of the building permit fees. So that motion will bring forward after our open session. So I'm going to move directly to CS 062-2021's zoning bylaw lift in regards to the hold symbol on 7685 County Road 9. So I'll read this and then I'll look for a mover and seconder. Recommendation be it resolved. The Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive report CS 062-2021 for information regarding a lifting of a hold H22 symbol. And item 2, pass a zoning bylaw amendment to the Clearview Township zoning bylaw number 0654, being bylaw 21-118, to lift the hold H22 symbol for the lands municipally known as 7685 County Road 9, legally described as concession 5, part lot 9, being parts 1 and 2 of 51R 41231, formerly in Creemore and now in the Township of Clearview. Okay, mover and seconder on this motion. Mr. Lamers, Mr. Broderick, thank you. Ms. Burton, would you like to speak briefly about the significance of the lift H22?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. I actually have Rosalind Workman here, so this is her file, so I'll pass it over to her.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you, Mayor Measures. Yeah, just wanted to let you know that this has been an ongoing file for a number of years. What you should be aware of is that the site plan agreement, which is also being considered tonight, which is the next file, they're meant to be sort of running concurrently. So the applicant and the owner has signed the site plan agreement, and that is the condition of lift of the hold. Other than that, I'm here for any questions you may have.
Excellent. Is there anybody with any questions? All right. Thank you, Rosalind and Mara, for jumping in with that. Members of council, we've heard the motion. I'm prepared to call it. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Don't go away, Roz, because I think this is the same one. A CS 063 site plan approval for 7685 County Road 9. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive report CS 063-2021 for information. And item 2, issues a site plan approval for 7685 County Road 9 Incorporated for the continuing operation of a metals recycling transfer station on the subject lands as illustrated in Midwest Metals site sketch, buildings, outdoor storage, and service plan drawing 1 by Martin Kinsley, dated December 2020, updated April 21, 2021, and Midwest Metal Site Sketch Parking Loading Landscape Plan Drawing, item 2, by Martin Kinsley, dated December 20, updated April 21, 2021. And item 3, approved bylaw number 21-119, authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the site plan agreement with 7685 County Road 9, Inc., underneath the name Andrew Gallo, who has the authority to bind the corporation known as 7685 County Road 9, County Road number 9, Inc. Can you make it any more complicated? Mover and seconder, please. Mr. Patterson, Mr. Broderick, Ms. Workman, go ahead.
Again, this is as I said, this has been an ongoing file since the site plan actually has been going on since 2006 and beyond. So we were really happy to get this in front of you and happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, any members of council with any questions? No? Oh, yes, I see that. Councillor Patterson, go ahead, and then we'll go to Lamers. Go ahead, Mr. Patterson.
Just one that occurred to me as you were speaking there to Rosalind. So we had seen this some time ago. I didn't see any changes. Were there any significant changes from, this may have even gone before pre-COVID?
Yes.
I saw this.
Ms. Workman?
No changes that I'm aware of that would be any different. I mean, the operation has been ongoing, yeah, there really isn't any changes.
Okay, that's all. I didn't see any either. I just wanted to confirm. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Lamers?
Thank you, Worship. Rosalind, they're just trying to clean up the yard and make it safer and containment fields better, aren't they?
They have, yes. And the other thing that they've done by entering into the agreement with the township, the corporation, is sort of legitimize what not that it isn't a legitimate business, but it actually formalizes their business, and it means that they've actually accomplished, you know, all of the approvals they needed. So engineering has been approved, County of Simcoe has approved, Nottawasaga Valley has approved, and now they need to follow through and maintain those approvals. So.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very
Looks
much.
good over
Yes.
there.
Yeah, it does. It does. All right. I just want to acknowledge too, working with our partners at the County of Simcoe to help us get through this project. And so it was great to see this finally come to fruition. Members of council, if there's nothing further, I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. All right, council, we still have a few more minutes, so let's discuss this one. Perhaps we'll go over to Terry Vachon. This is the Parks, Culture, and Recreation report regarding the support person policy. Okay, recommendation be it resolved. The Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive report PCR 024 2021 support person policy dated December 13, 2021. And item 2, approve the support person policy as presented in Schedule A to this report. Can I have a mover and seconder, and then we'll hear from the staff. Mr. Walker, Mr. Burton, thank you. Hey there, Mr. Vachon and Ms. Murray, nice to see you both. Who would like to go first?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll go first. I'm actually just going to be deferring the report to Ms. Murray. It's her report, obviously. She's worked very closely with the Accessibility Committee as well as Ms. Gill from our HR department. But on behalf of our department, though, I would like to congratulate Ms. Murray and Ms. Gill. And I think a job really well done, and it's a policy that we think that is that the community is very ready to receive. So with that, Your Worship, with your permission, I'd like to defer the report to Ms. Murray.
Excellent. Welcome, Amanda Murray. Nice to see you. And you are muted. Isn't that fun? You get to be the first one in the meeting.
Thank you. Again, I'm pretty sure you can read my lips. I always start off with the same. Thank you, Mayor Measures and members of council. Good evening. This report is fairly straightforward. It's actually a little bit of a housekeeping matter, I guess you could say. Our department already currently provides free access for support persons who are attending recreation programs, primarily at the Youth Center and the Stayner Centennial Pool. But the real driving force behind this was because of COVID. We need to be able to track capacity and contact tracing. So now we require those support people to register with the attendant that they are supporting. So what was really great about this is that it does support our overall accessible customer service standards, which is required by AODA. And upon review with the Accessibility Committee that Ms. Gill helped me prepare this policy with, it was approved, and they recommended that it comes forward to council for final adoption. Just some of the key highlights contained within the policy. We are providing free access to parks, rec, and culture facilities that our department currently oversees, and that we're encouraging our community halls to follow suit with this type of program. It's certainly something that I know many of them already do, and that there's no direct financial impact to the ratepayers and taxpayers of Clearview Township. We already build in a fairly good buffer for admission fees for each of our programs. So the report, as well as the policy, is here for you tonight to review, and both myself and Terry are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Terry and Amanda. I appreciate the hard work you've done on that. And I also acknowledge the work of the volunteers on our Accessibility Advisory Committee. Okay, any members of council with any questions? Not seeing any. Good report. It's nice to see this type of thing come forward. Thank you. All right, council. Thank you, staff. You've got the motion, and I think we have a mover and seconder. So I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Well done. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, we have, I guess we got a couple things we can still talk about here. So let's go with this one. Item number PW 041. It's in regards to Stayner water supply financing. So I'll read this one. And then I'll look for a mover and seconder and then comments from the CAO and Mr. Ron. Council, be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive report PW 041-2021 Stayner water supply financing dated December 13, 2021. And item 2, that the CAO and Director of Public Works be given authority to finalize the draft DCA early payment agreement attached as Schedule 1 to this report, subject to such amendments as may be approved by staff, financial consultants, and the township solicitor. And item 3, that the bylaws for these agreements and recovery of capital costs for Stayner water supply be presented to council for final approval in early 2022. Okay, can I have a mover and seconder? Mr. Broderick, Mr. Walker, thank you. Mr. Broderick, Mr. Walker. Mr. Ferguson, do you want to outline some of the items in this first? And then I'm sure Mr. Ron has a lot to say on this. And you're the second person to be muted there, John. You're muted. There you go. See, you and Amanda can, share the chocolate box tonight. How's that?
Sounds good. This is just laying out the preliminary requirements of the agreement. So I'll let Mike explain it in further detail, Your Worship.
All right. Mr. Ron, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's really, it's just to allow us to work on this through the Christmas holidays and then through January, just to be prepared. Some of the timing requirements, we'd like to have these things tendered early 2022. And if we can work at them over the, what could be holidays for many, it might be beneficial to the developers to keep it moving forward. Both reports.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about only one report at this time. Members of council, any questions to our staff on this kind of important document? Anybody? All right. My only question would be that the ability to bring back any significant changes or amendments that are significant enough that council should be brought to attention. Mr. CAO, I'm sure you would contact the clerk and myself if you needed to hold a special meeting in regards to any of these questions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's so members of council would be assured that if there's anything that's outside of their abilities, that they will certainly let us know, and we will call a special meeting to discuss if necessary. All right. Members of council, thank you very much. Thank you, staff. If there's nothing further, I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item is something that we have a conflict on. So Councillor Walker, we acknowledge you've got a conflict on this. So Mr. Walker is going to leave the meeting. I will read the recommendation and we'll look for a mover and seconder. Recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive report PW 042-2021, the Southeast Stayner wastewater financing dated December 13, 2021, and item 2, that the CAO and Director of Public Works be given authority to finalize the draft cash flow funding agreement and the draft servicing bylaw attached as Schedule 1 and 2 to this report, subject to such amendments as may be approved by staff, financial consultants, and the township solicitor. And item 3, that bylaws for these agreements and recovery of capital costs for wastewater servicing of Sunnydale Street be presented to council for final approval in early 2022. Can I have a mover and seconder on this motion, please? Mr. Broderick, seconder. Mr. Lamers. Excellent. Gentlemen, Mr. CAO and Mr. Ron, do you have any comments you'd like to bring up before we ask for questions?
This really relates to the discussion we had with the residents on Sunnydale Street. And this is a report that lays out those contributions that'll be required. And ultimately that will lead to the bylaw being written and presented to council after Christmas, I believe is when it's scheduled to come in. Mike, I'll ask Mike to add further to that if he likes.
Mike?
So again, it's so we can work on these, with the development community. Just to bring one thing to council's attention, there was a couple of residents that had claimed to have paid DCs for sewers on that street. A little outside my area of expertise, because it was in the settlement area, there may have been a time when sewers were charged for the entire settlement area. I know Kelly and our Watson Associates have been reviewing those things. And they're going to be reviewed in detail. Like if somebody's paid, you know, I let Kelly speak to it, but if somebody's paid a DC for sewer for the pipe works or something, they'll be credited on that. But it's something that our consultants have to work out too, because they, you know, authored our DC background study. So other than that, it's everything council's fully aware of. We're just continuing the process.
Okay, can I just ask a question before I go to members? Mr. Ron, you're suggesting that there'll be further investigation about some of these properties may have pre-existing DC fees that have already been paid, and you're investigating it at that time. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I expect that'll be part of the report when we see this in January, maybe February, by the time we get this. Excellent.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to charge people that aren't to be charged for anything.
Right, I understand. All right, well, that'll be good investigation. We'd certainly like to hear that. Members of council, have you any questions to our staff after we've heard that clarity? All right, yes, Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Your Worship. So initially, we were looking at 33,740 that we were going to charge, or that the residents were going to have to pay, and then that got dropped down to $14,130, a 58% decrease. That was quite a drop. I got me wondering that initial 33,000, was that sort of an inflated charge in the first place? But it just didn't sit well with me. My question, I guess, is I asked this once before. Did the township go back to the developers after the public information meeting that was held at the communication center and ask if the developers could bring any more money to the table? Was that done at all?
Mr. McKechnie, after the public information session that was held virtually, the CAO, after the virtual meeting, the CAO spoke to members of the development community. And then there was a supplemental meeting that was held at the community center at their request. The citizens on Sunnydale requested it. And so there was an opportunity for that sort of in-person, very well socially distanced meeting that was held. Mr. CAO, do you have anything you want to add there?
Yeah, the original development costs were the actual costs for the sewer to be installed. And we went back to the developers and said, look, it's too expensive. And the developers came to the table with the difference that brought it down from 33,740 to 14,130. And then we did then communicate that at the next meeting.
Yeah. Mr. McKechnie, you're comfortable with that?
No, not really. At that meeting, then the residents, were the residents in agreement then with that 14,000, or did they ask that it be brought down a little bit more? What I'm getting at here, John, is that I'm just wondering if we went back to the developers a second time and said, look, can you bring anything else to the table here?
John?
I didn't go back to the developers, no.
Mr. Ron?
I just want to clarify a couple. So the developer, we're not allowed to ask developers to fund private residences sewers. That was explained by Gary Scanlon. So the 33,740, in order for that to come down to 14,130, the developers are all paying an extra $10,000 per unit. So they're actually paying $43,740 per unit. And because they had, I think it was 140 units, if I remember right, that's what brought that number down. But we're not allowed to, the township's not allowed to ask developers to pay for that. They volunteered that in order to make the process come to this point.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. And if I may, Your Worship, one more question.
Sure.
So the CAO earlier addressed whether any of the what's it called, the OCFI fund, that new fund or that grant that we just got, whether that could be used. And I didn't really think that was a real definitive answer. So I'm just sort of wondering if we approve this tonight, and then we can find out down the road that we can use any of that funds to revisit this and possibly lower the cost to the residents, can that then be added, or can that then be applied so that we do lower the cost to the residents down the road if we can use the fund, if we find we can use a portion of that fund? I know that the CAO had mentioned it's really not supposed to be used for new projects, but you know, but there I don't think that there was complete clarity there.
Mr. CAO?
It's just because it's an opening letter. What they describe in their letter tells me that new infrastructure wouldn't be covered. It doesn't state that. It does say that we can talk to them, so we can, but based on the asset management approach that they're taking, it doesn't appear to be the case. I would also add that it's not something that has been recommended in the past in Clearview Township. And my understanding is that there were concerns that you can't create a precedent without attracting some difficulties from previous developments where citizens had to contribute to the infrastructure. It could create a problem for the municipality. We haven't looked into it in great detail, but that has been the practice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, just a clarification. You may have already done this. When I read in the letter of the Corps, I actually assumed what they meant was roads, bridges, water, wastewater. In other words, not new or old, but your core municipal services. Is that part of the clarity we're going to get, or do we already know they don't mean that?
Well, in the next paragraph in that letter, I'll try to bring it up again here. It talks about the current, just one second.
It talks about rehab and
the current value of the infrastructure, I forget the term it used, so that it knows what infrastructure you're replacing. Meaning that you're looking at an asset that's worn out, that has to be replaced. They want to gear the money towards that type of asset management plan, which lends me to believe it's not meant for new infrastructure. And that's in the paragraph that follows. Look, I could be wrong, but I don't think it's for new infrastructure.
yeah, no, I'm sure you are. I just interesting. There were a couple of questions on that, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You know, the whole thing is a little bit of a question mark when the whole OCIF funding announcement came out, because the township was not notified that it was receiving it until we got a letter. I believe the clerk, or sorry, the treasurer received it, and then it popped up in social media that this announcement had been made in Toronto, and we didn't even know about it. So it was a bit of a surprise to all of us here too. So
I guess we could
it's certainly welcome. It was welcome to see, mind you. I mean, almost $450,000 additional to the OCIF funding, of which has been pretty stable funding for this municipality and other municipalities across Ontario, and then they've given it quite a boost. Nearly $1 billion over 5 years. So that's pretty significant. Yes, John.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just brought it up again, and it's the current replacement values is what they're using, which lets me to think it's not new infrastructure.
Replacement value. No, there you go. Okay. Nothing further on this. If everybody comfortable now, you've got their answers. All right, members of council and Deputy Mayor, I think you're there. I'm not sure if you've disappeared or not. Deputy Mayor? There you are. Just making sure you're there for the vote. Thank you, sir.
My internet's fading in and out, so I'll just be turning it on when you actually call for the vote.
All right, well then I'm just going to say I'm prepared to call the motion if there's no further questions. All right, we've got a mover and seconder, so I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Motion will be carried. All right. And we're just at, well, we are at 6:30. Would you look at that? We're at 6:30. So I'm just going to make a note here on my where we are. Should pick up at PWO 43. And in the meantime, we're going to move back to our public meetings. All right. So council, we're going to initiate the public meeting process. And as I indicated earlier, welcome back to Councillor Walker. If he's there, I think he's going to join us for the public meetings. All right, there you are. All right, and the deputy mayor has just shut off his camera to conserve his internet. All right, we're going to carry on. Our first public meeting, we have two tonight, is the, this one's about the building code. Hello, Scott McLeod is here, our chief building official. So I'll read the comments and then we'll go to our presentation from our chief building official. We are now going to initiate the public meeting portion of tonight's agenda. The public meeting is held pursuant to Section 7 of the Building Code Act 1992 as amended to present and obtain public input on the municipality's proposed building permit fee bylaw revision as identified in the notice of public meeting. Please be advised that your written and oral comments will form part of the public record. Your communication or any personal information therein will be available to the public. Following the public meeting will involve a brief presentation by the township chief building official, including a brief explanation and any written comments received, a period for public comments or questions, if any, and an opportunity for questions by council. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our chief building official, Mr. Scott McLeod, who will be presenting the building permit fee bylaw revision that is being considered tonight at this meeting. Again, this is it's a virtual meeting, so this is our virtual meeting procedure. I welcome Scott McLeod. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. I'll just have the clerk post the presentation on. Great, thank you. So we're here this evening to for a proposed building permit fee bylaw revision to not increase building permit fees by the annual indexing. Next slide, please. So notice and circulation of the public meeting took place. Again, the notices regarding proposed building permit fee revision bylaw amendment, and it has been given in accordance with the Building Code Act. Notice was given on November 18th, and the posting was via our website. Details of the proposed building permit fee revision and supporting materials have been made available to the public. Next slide, please. So the information that was made available to the public was obviously the notice of the public meeting itself, but also the staff report was prepared and made available at the same time. And again, the report is based on proposed building permit fee bylaw revisions to not increase building permit fees by the annual indexing. We also had attached to that a Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Schedule 1 is outlining the building department reserve balance for the end of 2020, and Schedule 2 is our existing building permit fee bylaw schedule. Next slide, please. So where we are in the process, we're here this evening for the public meeting. Again, there is also a staff recommendation and report that has been made available to the public preceding this public meeting, but it is also on the agenda this evening as well. Council will either approve or deny the proposed building permit fee revision. In the event that the bylaw is ultimately approved, then the bylaw would come into force in effect January the 1st. Next slide, please. So as previously mentioned, under the freedom of information, we just need to state that we invite your comments to the proposed building permit fee revisions and engage with us in this process. Again, please be advised that your comments will form part of the public record. Your communication and any personal information therein will be made available to the public unless you expressly request its removal. Next slide, please. So by way of background, our building permit fee bylaw, which has been in place for some time, they are adjusted annually on January 1st of each year. The indexing increase is in accordance with the prescribed construction index that is also used for development charge bylaws as determined by the treasurer. And it's based on the construction index 12-month period ending on September 30th. And so what we found out in November is that the prescribed construction index increase for this year would be 11.6%. Next slide, please. So the current building department reserve balance as of last year, December 31st, 2020, is just over $1 million. This is our cost stabilization fund or surplus. The current fee and charges bylaw for the building department effectively covers the full cost of administration. There was a period in time, of course, when we did have a deficit, but that no longer exists. And that's in a large part due to the bylaw and the indexing that is in place. So again, the current fees and charges are covering the full cost of building department administration. Next slide, please. So the recommendation is to propose not to increase the building permit fees by the annual index. Again, typically the index, indexing any bylaw or any fee is wise, in my opinion, just because it keeps up with inflation. And typically what we would see is an increase in the range of 1 to 3%. I can think of 1 year in the past 10 years or so where there was a negative actual increase where our fees actually went down moderately. But typically it's in stage with inflation. But of course, this year with construction costs and everything else, the construction index is extremely high. And so it's sitting at 11.6%. So we just felt that for this year, an increase isn't necessary, and we really felt that it wasn't appropriate at this time. So that's the purpose of us bringing this public meeting and this recommendation before council for consideration this evening. Next slide. So there really is no financial impact by making this decision. Again, with our proposed 2022 Clearview budget for building permit fees increase isn't considered. We essentially look at the previous year, see where we are. So we're not counting on the indexing as part of our budget review. We take a very conservative approach to that. And so there really is no financial impact as a result of not increasing our building permit fees as part of this process. Next slide. And that's really all I had. So this is, just to sort of summarize, it is a little unusual. I guess this is the dream. This is where we dreamed we would be, is before council to consider not increasing our building permit fees. So that day has arrived. Again, with moderate indexing, that's something that we could consider, but it's so extreme this year. I suspect that we are not. I know there's a lot of chatter out there with other municipalities regarding this increase, and there's other municipalities that are considering the same issue. So I'd certainly entertain any questions the council may have.
Thank you very much, Scott, for your presentation and the information in your report. And I see Councillor Patterson has his hand up, so we'll go directly. Actually, first, before we do that, Tom, I've got a little bit of a script here. I need to ask the clerk something. So that's why Madam Clerk joined us. Can the clerk please advise if there is anyone who has provided a request to make an oral submission that are in the waiting room or would like to speak to the proposed building permit fee bylaw revision? Questions may be directed to or responded to by the township's chief building official, but should be addressed through the chair. Madam Clerk, can you confirm whether we have anybody in with oral submissions?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Through you to the rest of council. There's been nobody who wishes to make any oral statements during this public meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Again, in a public meeting process, you need to follow the script. So it's right here in front of me. Does a member of council wish to make a comment or question to staff? Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I've been here long enough to know to continually be surprised when I see the surplus we have in our reserve. on the building side. So it's nice to see, and I think it's a wise policy. I just had a couple questions. I assume there's no real correlation between our service cost recovery and the CPI directly. It's kind of a gauge, I guess. So if we don't do the charge, presumably we're still doing full cost recovery and then still putting some funds in the recovery plan.
Yes,
Mr. McLeod.
through your worship to Councillor Patterson. Yes, as part of our budget planning with the budget for 2022 that's before council already consideration takes that into account in terms of we try to shoot from a moderate amount going into reserves. We can never predict necessarily the amount of activity we're going to get in any given year, but we certainly have a fairly good experience on what that is, and so by not considering it, it's not putting us at risk. There isn't a direct correlation. It's just a number that typically is engaged with the industry and in touch with inflation, I guess, is what you could say. Some municipalities may not be considering this because perhaps they're not in the same state that we are, and so they may fully be realizing the 11.6% increase this year. But we did not feel that that was necessary for our current situation.
That's good. That's good. Good thinking.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other members of council with any questions to our staff in regards to the report? Okay, I'll leave it at that. I do have one small question, Mr. McLeod. In regards to a topic we just discussed a moment ago about Sunnydale Street and some of that work, part of your department work is also involved in inspections on some of these laterals that need to be installed along that street. Is that correct, Mr. McLeod?
So yes, Your Worship. So with regards to any new sewer installations, like on private properties, the building department is involved in the inspection of the lateral in from the property line to the new service, like from the building, but the component that's on private lands.
That's right, on the private land portion, correct. So there's generally a fee involved in that type of work. And I understand through the CAO that part of the discussion at the sessions were that we could absorb some of those fees. And I see with that surplus, I wonder if that is where that might be coming from. Would you have a comment on that, Mr. McLeod?
I don't have a comment. I'm certainly happy to have that dialogue with the management team or whatever, and with the treasurer specifically in terms of what our ability is to do that under the regulations. So it's a lot of restrictions on what we can do and what we cannot with regards to building department reserves.
Okay, Mr. CAO, I know you attended that meeting. Would you have any comment on how we as a township could address that, given that we have a very nice, well-planned reserve for this department?
I know there's been some ideas implemented in other municipalities. I'd like to talk to our senior management about that and to see if there's something that we can come up with. At this point in time, I can't say for certain, but I'd like to have that discussion.
All right, I just wanted to bring it up since we were just recently talking about it. And it is about fees, so it's in the same category. Seeing no further questions, is there any other further questions? All right, so then at this point, I'll conclude the public meeting with respect to the municipality's proposed building permit fee revision amending bylaw. And we want to thank all that provided comments, and for their interest in this matter, these comments will be considered by council prior to the enactment of the building permit fee bylaw revision. And so I will now close this public meeting and thank Scott McLeod for joining us at this time. Council, we're going to go directly to public meeting number 2, which is our public meeting in regards to our municipal proposed budget for 2022. This is the public meeting. So I have the script here in front of me, and I see our treasurer, Kelly McDonald, has joined us. So I will commence with this. We will now initiate the second public meeting for tonight's agenda. The public meeting is being held to present and obtain public input on the municipality's proposed 2022 budget. As identified in the notice of public meeting, please be advised that your written and oral comments will form part of the public record. For your communication or any personal information therein will be made available to the public. And the following public meeting will involve a brief presentation by the Township's Treasurer, Kelly McDonald, including a brief explanation of any written comments received and a period of public comments or questions, if any, as an opportunity for questions from council as well after the presentation. So I would like to now turn to Kelly McDonald, and she has a presentation for us. I believe she's working with the clerk's department to make sure that that works out. So good luck, Kelly.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as you know, this is meeting number 3 for the 2022-2023 Clearview Township budget. We are here tonight for public input. So no council decisions are required at this meeting. That will happen in January when we regroup. I believe it's the meeting on the 17th, but I will double check with the clerk. We'll come back to council for final discussion and decisions. You can go to the next slide, please, Sasha. So these are the highlights of the proposed budget. We've got a total of 70.2 million scheduled for our capital budget. A lot of this is development related. We do, however, have to have it in the budget, but it will be covered by development charges. So from taxation, we have 1.68 million funding for our capital projects. The operating budget, which also includes county requisitions, school boards, the OPP, and VCA, that's at 31.2 million in total, with 17.08 coming from taxation. Next slide. So this is where we were way back in November when we first met. We had a net overall increase of 4.74. Next slide, please. At our November 29th meeting, we had the county numbers come in at 2%. We've been estimating it at 0%, similar to the prior year. So that brought us back up to a 5.01 increase. And then for the next slide, please. Where we sit now, between a couple of additional staff changes and council recommendations, we are now at a net increase of 3.36. Next slide. So this is just a visual of what we've changed. We had some reserves set aside that were brought into the capital budget. We had some little bit of funding left over from the modernization grant that hadn't been used this year. So that's been pulled into the operating budget. And then there were the 2 council reductions for the speed signs and for the additional increase to the affordable senior housing reserve transfer. Next slide, please. So based on the 3.36% increase, we're looking at about $37.20 increase per $100,000 of value. The average home or median home in Clearview Township is right around the 300,000 mark. So you're looking just under $100 per year for each. Next slide. These are just a bit of a highlight on where the increases are coming from. For the most part, it's in operations. We've tried to keep the capital as stable as possible. So we've got the new HR assistant, the regular staff increases. We lost some revenues from the sale of our one property. And of course, the OPP contract increase is also in there. Next slide. So planning and development changes. We've got the new CityView software that's being used across 3 different departments right now, building, planning, and bylaw. So there's an addition for that. We're also looking at a retirement coming up over the next year. So there's a little bit of funding in there for the recruitment. Next slide, please. Public Works, we had a $289,000 increase to capital, regular staffing increases. Increased pavement markings, the costing for transit has gone up, and we are increasing the reserve transfer for the heavy equipment reserve. We aren't keeping up with the costs for the equipment, and it has to be replaced. So, next slide. Fire and emergency changes. So we're having the admin assistant move to full-time. There was a captain's honorariums that Chief Payment discussed. Increases in vehicle maintenance. It's just based on historical, what we're expecting to have to deal with coming up in the future. Next slide. Recreation and culture is focused mostly on staffing needs for pretty much a COVID generated situation where we need extra staff in the building at all times now for cleaning and for monitoring numbers and just the general COVID fun. Next slide, please. This one we've seen quite a few times, but just as a reminder, that it's not been an easy budget year. Staff has gone, in my opinion, over and above to try and keep costs down, but there are just certain things that we have no control over. And this budget is primarily that. Next slide, please. This is just a quick reminder for everyone. Out of every tax dollar that Clearview collects, we keep 54 cents. 16 cents goes to the education boards, and 30 cents goes to the county, the OPP, the MVCA. Next slide. And this is just a breakdown showing you where our revenues come from. As you can see, property taxes are the main component of our revenues. We look for other sources wherever we can, grants, development charges when it's applicable. But for the most part, property taxes fund the budget. Next slide, please. This is a graphic showing you where the money is spent. So we discussed the county and the education. Each individual department is broken up on how much they receive of that tax dollar. Next slide, please. We did discuss debt capacity at our last meeting. This graph is just showing you that, that chart once again. And at the request of Councillor Patterson, he was wondering how much of it was coming from taxation. Sorry, next slide, please. So out of the debt payments, a total of 6.6% is actually from taxation. The rest is from either water and sewer user fees. We get 70% of it are covered by development charges. So that's going to be any of our growth projects. And 6.2 are from other revenue sources. So the loans for the solar panels, for example, those are paid from the revenue generated from the solar panels. Next slide. And just our debt chart once again, just to keep everybody in mind that we're well below our ARL, but with the projects coming over the next few years, we will be creeping close. Next slide. And that's the end of the quick presentation. Now, just as a quick aside, I know everybody's heard of the OCIF grant money, which is absolutely fantastic news coming from the province. It's actually about $600,000 more than we were expecting. And as I say, found money is amazing. But as CAO Ferguson was referring to earlier, that's for renewing and replacing current infrastructure. And it's based on the fact that many municipalities are suffering such a deficit right now. We have to keep that money just to keep things running.
Just before we go on, Ms. Treasurer, if you could just confirm, you know, that announcement did come Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, and the charts and so on that you've shown us just now, has that been reflected in that, or is that previous to this OCIF announcement?
No, I was not able to incorporate that. These were accurate on Wednesday afternoon. They became a little bit inaccurate Thursday morning.
For sure.
But again, that'll be a council direction where they would like us putting that money.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify for the public's sake and for members of council that, you know, you've heard me say this before, that announcements come from the province about every 20 minutes. So you have to sort of really keep track. And this is one of them where it came very unannounced, and so it's a great benefit, but we just aren't able to keep the charts up to date and have them presented in a timely manner for transparency. So it's an ongoing process. So we appreciate that. All right, council, I have, or members of this public meeting, I have to now go to the clerk. Can the clerk please advise if there's anyone who has provided a request to make any oral submissions that are in the waiting room or would like to speak to the proposed 2022 budget Questions may be directed to responded to by the township staff, but should also be addressed through the chair. And Sasha, do you have some questions? I believe there were some written questions. Do we want to deal with those first? Sasha?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. I'll defer to our treasurer, Ms. McDonald. Would you like to review the written comments first, and then we'll bring in the oral participants?
Kelly?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank
Go
you,
right
Your
ahead,
Worship.
Kelly.
So we had 4 people write in written comments for the budget presentation. Mr. Huskinson is wondering why the increase is shown as a net percentage increase. We do actually outline both. If he wanted further information, he's more than welcome to contact me. But we want to show taxpayers what the actual net effect is going to be on their tax bill. And I find personally that the net tax increase is the most accurate. Mr. James Rawls wrote in just outlining Barrie, Orillia, and Springwater all came in under 3%, and he would like Clearview Township to follow the same. He also mentioned the aerial truck. It's not actually in the 2022 budget, it's in the 2023 budget, but there's no tax dollars going to that. That's 100% funded for growth, so it's through development charges. Karen Crevier wrote in, she's on behalf of a group of neighbors on the 6th concession, north of County Road 91, and she would like the speeding signs put back into the budget. I guess she has done a little bit of research and is actually willing to chip in personally for those signs. And then we have Mr. Dave Witzka. He had one question about a legal matter that I'm not at liberty to speak to. He had a question of Public Works regarding the $100,000 for the line painting and about whether it would be used for other missed projects throughout the current year or if it's geared just for next year's projects. He did mention something about sole source tenders. And I did want to respond to Mr. Witzka that we follow bylaw 1720, which is our procurement policy. So we don't single source unless it's permitted under that bylaw. And he asked about transit fares. He felt our transit fares were far too low in comparison with the city of Barrie.
All right, those are the written comments. All right, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. So I believe I'll go back to the clerk. Madam Clerk, you have anyone waiting in the waiting room for oral submissions who'd like to participate and join us in this meeting?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Yes, we have 3 residents in the waiting room.
Okay.
The first resident that I'm going to promote as a participant is Brad Dennison. So just bear with me as he comes into the meeting. Mr. Dennison, you're in the meeting. You can turn on your camera and your microphone.
Hi there.
Hello, Mr. Dennison. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Council. How are you? Just on behalf of my wife, and I'll say Kathy from the post office, and we would really like to wish Councillor Leishman all the best and a speedy recovery and our good well wishes.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. I got a couple questions. And maybe this is on the, it's just for my information, and maybe this is maybe for Kelly. And Kelly, can you explain to me just the, I guess it's the blended rate. It started at 9.14%, and then the blended rate comes in at 4.74. And the reason why I say that, I'm not really, can you just explain how that works? That how does it come down to 4.74? A blended rate?
Good question, Mr. Dennison, and it is a point of confusion for sure. Perhaps the treasurer can review how we come to what's called the blended rate, which is in fact the actual tax increase. Kelly?
Through your worship to Mr. Dennison, we're actually now at 3.36% as a net increase. And what happens is the total Clearview increase is then added with the OPP increase, which is 0.3. Then we add in the Simcoe County increase, which is 2, and we subtract the education tax increase, which is 1. At the end of the day, it's based on the dollar increase per property. And that's where the blended rate of 3.36 comes in.
Okay, great, thanks. In your, I kind of missed it. So the recommended tax increase for next year, was that 3.9%?
Through your worship to Mr. Dennison, it's currently at 3.36.
3.36, my apologies. I have another one. My other question would be, can you explain to me how reserve funding works? I watched your workshop number 2, and there was reserve funds that were going into that held back for the, I guess, the seniors housing and that sort of thing. How does that work? Like, what's the criteria for reserve reserve funding?
Yeah, first of all, we do have several reserve funds, actually, Mr. Dennison, for many, many things. Most of them are related to capital operations. There's very few reserves that are actually used in operating, but all of them are due to capital purchases. So as something ages or a project that needs to be done, a reserve account will be set up by council. And so we have many different types of reserves. Other reserves we have are reserves that actually take operating funds and put them into the capital or into the reserve called the Tax Stabilization Fund, which is a very significant reserve. And that is based on any savings that come as a result of work that's done by our staff on projects. So if we tender something and we get a tender that comes back very favorable, we have a savings of tax dollars that we did not spend. So we put it in the Tax Stabilization Reserve. So there are several types of reserves. But so hope that helps. Maybe Kelly, you can sort of fill in some of the blanks there from what I know.
Thank you, Your Worship. You actually did a pretty spectacular job. That's exactly what the discretionary reserves are. Council sets them up so that when we get to the point where we have to replace a building or we have to replace a piece of large equipment, at least a good chunk of the funding has been set aside. And that goes in from the operating budget each year, is transferred into the reserve, earmarked for that particular project by council.
Okay, great, thank you. I do have another question, and I was just wondering with some of the fee for services that those groups that have come in, and I was kind of watched the workshop number 1, and it seemed like some of for example, $50,000 increase for the OPP, and I realize we're in COVID this year and last year. Was that an increase for services, or was it status quo for last year? So I guess my question, I'm kind of wondering what that increase, was there any movement on that sum of money? And I'm just thinking there's other fee for service groups that are there and lines of business. With us being in COVID, what room do you have for any negotiation process to say, oh, hey, that might be a little bit too much for us? Or is that a fixed cost?
That's a difficult one, Mr. Dennison, particularly when it comes to the OPP. We have no negotiation ability with the OPP. The Solicitor General's office.
That's their increase of, okay.
It's difficult. Kelly, do you have any comment about the OPP funding or other fee for service questions?
Through your worship to Mr. Dennison, that was a $52,000 increase directed by the OP. They provide us our budget. We have very little, we don't have any wiggle room in it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right. Lastly, and I just want to talk about the Sunnydale sewers, and I've talked to council before on that. And can I just get another, I guess we're interpreting language, and I guess this will be for CAO, Mr. Ferguson. And when I look, I have information here from our Ontario Minister of Infrastructure, Kinga Surma, and she's quoted, or he rather, I'm sorry, we're providing stability and predictability to small rural and northern communities as they repair, upgrade, and modernize their critical infrastructure so that they are safer, healthier, and more reliable for all. So when I go back into and I look at the investment is intended, and Mr. Ferguson, I think I'm just going to say again what you had said, help build and repair roads bridges, water, and wastewater infrastructure in small rural and northern communities. So I guess it's language, and maybe you haven't gotten all the way through that, but I'm thinking to myself, help build and repair roads. And I'm going to go back to our meeting that we had, our in-person meeting, October 29th, and we were really, for our street here, we do have our water pump this down the street, and we were really told that like it's unsafe for our septics, and that it was important to connect to sewer, of course. That kind of reminds me that that's building infrastructure, and I really read that as help build and or repair. So you're saying it's existing infrastructure that. So could I maybe be on record for clarification on that, and would you be able to, maybe get a definitive answer? Because I read that, maybe it's a legal thing, but I read that a little differently.
All right, Mr. Dennison, we'll allow our staff to answer that. And you're right, language is the key here. First of all, Kinga Surma is a young lady who is an MP and was recently promoted to the role of Minister of Infrastructure. And she recently served as the Deputy Director of Deputy Minister, I believe, for Transport. So she's got a bit of experience. So she's a very active member of the cabinet in the province of Ontario. So I'd like to go over to Mr. Ferguson to help again with the language on this. Mr. Ferguson, do you have any comment further to support what Mr. Dennison is suggesting, that there's a language concern about the Sunnydale opportunity there, and as well as how that infrastructure grant from OCIF has been received?
We have to get their permission on the conditions for which the money will be spent. So we still have to get their permission, and they'll work with us. The key parts of what they wrote in their letter and really suggest that it's not new infrastructure. And so, for example, sewer infrastructure compared to road infrastructure may have certain funds that apply to either. Okay. So in this circumstance, the municipality did contribute money to road infrastructure as it relates to Sunnydale, but they didn't contribute to the sewer section of Sunnydale. So I think some of the criteria that may be applicable to this OCIF increased funding may fit into roads. Okay, but we're already funding that. I don't believe it touches on sewer or new sewer infrastructure. That's now new sewer municipal infrastructure managed municipally. I don't think it qualifies because it's new infrastructure. And I think it may be actually defined like that. But I can certainly double check and get back to you, but I don't want to give any false hope. I do believe that it doesn't qualify as new infrastructure.
All right.
So then how would that infrastructure work, say, in our northern communities that if they were on a septic system, then they went into a sewage system, municipal sewage system, would that money not be able to be applied for that? Would that not be part of the criteria?
Well, a septic system is on personal property. The municipal sewer is a municipal system, so they're completely separate in that sense.
Okay.
Okay. I can't speak for what may be going on in northern community or what could be happening there, but
well, I was just saying because that's how it reads for all of Ontario. So there's talk about helping out in the northern and isolated local communities, right? So I think that's part of the infrastructure, whether roads are existing. So it sounds like your interpretation is it's existing refurbishment as such as roads or as far as your water and your waste. Is that your interpretation?
My interpretation is that they know that municipal infrastructure is costly and is at risk, and there's aging infrastructure. And this is really designed to make sure that when we're providing our asset management, that we're replacing the appropriate infrastructure at the appropriate time. So we're not going to replace something that at 10 years, it has a 30-year life. If it's got a 30-year life and it's year 27, then it should be on our radar to be replaced. And that's managing your assets, so to speak. So I think that's how they're set it up so that we can respond in that way.
Okay.
I hope that helps clarify. I know I can understand. But a lot of this funding is conditional.
And when would you receive that funding? Like, or is it still too new right now with what's come out? It is quite a sizable amount. It's in my understanding it's $2 billion. Am I correct in that, over 5 years?
For all of the municipalities in
all the
Ontario.
municipalities.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's a sizable amount of, and I think that's what one of on our street, what we're saying, well, what is there anything coming down to help out with this infrastructure? Mm-hmm. And to me, that really seems like that's a pretty nice sum of money provincially that's being supplied for our communities, right? So
it works out to be about an additional 600,000 to Clearview Township.
Per year or just this year? Is that on top of your 449 received for this year?
This is this year, 600,000 additional dollars approximately.
It's in total $1.044 million, correct?
Yeah, let's not get too confused here, folks. Kelly, what is the sort of average that we receive in the OCIF funding annually?
For your worship, to members of council and Mr. Dennison, our normal annual is the $450,000. So the additional 600,000 is what puts us up to the total that we're receiving. We don't know what to expect for 2023. The way I've read the letter, I'm hoping that this funding level continues, but till we get the actual notice, we try not to count on it. It can be pulled at any time. We're just very grateful to get it when we get it.
Okay.
So if I may add something to this. So let's agree that it's for existing infrastructure. So the existing infrastructure, we can use this money to help offset costs that may have occurred for the citizens. So there's still a benefit coming to the citizens in Clearview by receiving this additional money. We're able to put it where we wouldn't have to use other funds, and that would fall back on our local citizens. So that is a benefit here. Plus, once you have the existing infrastructure, future support will be available for that existing infrastructure based on the same criteria, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and that's the answer. Basically, for just to sum it up, is there's nothing then for Sunnydale Street. Am I correct in saying that?
There's nothing.
Mr. Dennison, let me just say that council needs to take the comments that are coming from this meeting, and we'll meet in another council workshop discussing the budget. Okay. And we'll use your comments to help us make decisions moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
It is a good, interesting point, though, how our budgets evolve even in the process. To be fair to our staff, they work for months trying to put together the package so that councilors can then start discussing and reviewing it all. And literally it changes weekly, that there's some type of change that comes. And so this is just one more change that's happened, and we're now trying to deal with it as well. So it's a bit of a surprise to you as it is to our staff and council. So, yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you for your time, and
thank you for joining us at the public meeting for the budget, Mr. Dennison. Thank you for your comments.
Merry Christmas to all.
Merry Christmas to you too. All the best.
Take care.
Thank you. I'd like to go to our clerk again. Madam Clerk, you said that there was at least a couple more residents that were going to join us. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Through you to the rest of council. Our next participant is Jim Campbell. I'm just going to promote him as a panelist into the meeting. Hi, Mr. Campbell, you're in the meeting. You can turn on your microphone and your video. Thanks.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello, Jim.
Everybody.
Welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Let me just pull up. I've just written something here. I'll just run through it just to keep on track. Thank you, Mayor Measures, member of council and staff, for this opportunity for the public to offer input on your 2022 budget deliberations. And thanks to Councillor Walker and Lamers for including Frosty and Santa behind you there as overseers to the meeting. Nearly 8 years ago, so in January 2014, some of you were present. I made a presentation to council on behalf of a lot of neighbors regarding some serious traffic concerns concession 10 residents and business owners had, largely involving a growing problem that much of the traffic we were seeing, digging out of snowbanks, sheltering after accidents, etc., were using the 10th as a shortcut to Blue Mountain Resort area and beyond. Over the following years, we have noticed the situation becoming more and more severe, and following a very frightening series of events one icy Monday morning, which involved multiple vehicle accidents and 2 school buses, my partner Suzanne and I distributed a short letter to every single household and business on the 10th line from 124 to 6th Street in Collingwood, as well as to some of the properties to the west which use or interact the 10th concession or interact with the 10th concession's traffic on a regular basis. It was a very simple letter. We just noted we had noticed a substantial increase in non-local traffic, and we shared our findings that GPS navigation systems seem to be directing this traffic onto the 10th rather than more suitable alternate routes such as the 400 highway, believe it or not, because of a travel time savings of approximately 1 minute, depended on the day, 1 to 3 minutes, 1 to 4 minutes, something like that. We asked the recipients to let us know if they wish to be kept in the loop in regard to any processes with the township looking into this problem. The response far exceeded our expectations. A huge number of residents immediately expressing their concerns, and this had been on their mind, obviously, and their desire for action to be taken by Clearview Township to reduce both the amount of GPS routed traffic as well as, in some instances, excessive speed. There were absolutely 0 responses indicating that the status quo should be retained. We only received comment from people, and we didn't say that we're looking at doing anything. We just said we're seeing a problem. If you're interested, yes. So we had kind of 100% positive ratio that people wanted something to be done. I believe council has completed some really valuable work through the traffic impact study. The 113 signatories of our October letter to council, as well as many others since then that have commented to us personally, applauded the unanimous.
I believe he's frozen on my screen. Okay, we'll give it a few minutes or a moment to see if Jim's internet returns. Now go ahead, Mr. McKechnie.
While we're waiting for Jim to come back, do you mind if I pop in with a question for staff on this?
Well, we're not at that point yet, but I know that it's certainly something that you'd like to speak about. So I appreciate that, Doug. Madam Clerk?
I can wait. I'm just trying to fill time. That's all. I can wait. If you want.
Well, we don't, you know. Ms. Clerk, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. We do have one additional public participant. So, oh, I think Jim's back on again.
Hello, Jim.
All right.
He's muted.
Sorry,
though.
you're muted. You're muted. So try again.
Oh, okay, sorry. I don't know when I lost you there. All of a sudden I got a spinning wheel.
Okay.
I may stop my video because it may help.
Sure, go ahead.
Jim, it's Tom Patterson. You froze when you mentioned 113 signatory.
Yeah.
I can bring in our third public participant, and then we can just keep Jim in the meeting in the background, and then he can get his camera turned off.
Technology, outstanding. Sasha, bring in the next participant, and we will give Mr. McLeod the benefit of the doubt, and we'll drag him in at the end. How's that?
Yep, we will do that for Mr. Campbell. So our next participant is Martin Ridlow. So I'm just going to promote him as a panelist.
Oh, Martin Ridlow. Okay. Yep.
Hi, Mr. Ridlow. You're in the meeting now. You can turn on your camera and your microphone.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Martin, just so you know, we lost the signal from Mr. Campbell just a minute ago. Hopefully you guys aren't on the same area as far as internet, but anyway.
No, I'm taking a slightly separate line, but we do need to do some work over there. So
in that part of the community, for sure. Thank you, Martin, for joining us. Okay.
Thank you. And hopefully my neighbor Jim can join us shortly. Mayor Measures, Deputy Mayor Burton, Council, and members of staff. The traffic management study released earlier this year recommended 60 kilometers per hour speed limit on several rural non-arterial roads, including Concession 10, Riverside Drive, Concession 6, and Fairgrounds Road. Council approved the lower speed limit in October based on this study and the associated staff recommendation, but then surprisingly removed the funding for the signs on all these roads after what appeared a rigorous process. I'm here as the business owner of Duntrue and Highlands Golf to support the lowering of the speed limit on Concession 10 and the investment in the appropriate speed limit signs staff and the traffic study recommended. The expert advice of the consultant reinforces what we are seeing, an incredible growth in Concession 10 visitor traffic over the last several years. Part of this visitor traffic is associated with the 3 businesses located here, but most of it comes as a result of the wayfinding apps Mr. Campbell mentioned that indicate Concession 10 as a preferred route to get to Blue Mountain and the surrounding resorts. We desperately need this slower speed limit, but without the signs, how are these visitors to know the new posted speed limit? I can assure you speeding on Concession 10 poses a tremendous risk to residents and the significant visitor traffic coming to Clearview's Highlands. Over the years, Clearview has already recognized the need to manage these traffic risks here. Thank you. This includes installation of the flashing stop sign at Concession 10 and 91, the installation of the digital speed signs, and undertaking of the traffic study. Clearview's Highlands area on Concession 10 offers the region's favorite golf course during spring, summer, and fall. And during the winter, our neighbors to the north at Highlands Nordic offer one of Ontario's premier Nordic ski facilities. Between Duntrue and Highlands Golf and Highlands Nordic, we represent one of Clearview's top 3 tourism attractions. We are proud to represent and promote Clearview, but we need the municipality's help in making sure their experience on the roads continues to be a safe one. We have shared the extensive list of 113 signatories who support the reduced speed limit on Concession 10 with Council in October. This is a real issue on Concession 10 with far-reaching support. I urge Council to now finish off all of the great work with the approval of the signage budget for Concession 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridlow. I appreciate that. Is there any questions that you'd like to pose to our staff or or comments you'd like to put forward? Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. I think I captured in my statements.
You certainly did, and your comments will be received and be part of our next council workshop in regards to the budget as part of this public meeting process. So thank you very much for your participation. Good to see you. All right, Merry Christmas. By the way, I like that Clearview Highlands. Interesting. Good job.
Thank you. It's a fantastic area.
You betcha. All right, thank you, Martin.
Good evening.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, are we able to bring Mr. Campbell back in? Is he going to be able to join us or not?
Mayor Measures, Mr. Campbell hasn't rejoined us at the moment. I suggest that maybe you move on to any council comments, and then if he does rejoin us, I will put up my request to speak.
Okay, if you get any notice that he's there, you let us know right away, okay? And I see Mr. McKechnie would like to jump in. Go ahead, Mr. McKechnie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering if Martin Ridlow is still there. Just wondering, Martin, if you're still there. I know that you've got your operation, the golf course there and the event center, plus Highlands Nordic right beside you. And I think Jim Campbell's business is beside, it's just to the south of you. How many people do you employ up there anyway?
Through you, Mayor
The three
Measures.
businesses.
We collectively over the annual cycle employ between 80 and 100 people across the 3 different businesses.
Okay, thank you. And I have a question for I guess the clerk, Your Worship. So before Mr. Campbell got cut off there, he was talking about the letter that he sent out to the community, the 113 signatories on the letter that was to council, the fact that it was 100% uptake or support for the lower speed limits. So according to, even though, I said earlier that I don't think the traffic calming study applies, which I still feel that way, but the traffic calming study did say that we are supposed to consult with the community. So the fact that Jim Campbell has undertaken this, is that good enough for consultation with the community? Or does the township have to go to the expense of going out and doing a whole separate survey of the 10th concession?
So Mr. McKechnie, how about we just remember we're in a public meeting process. So we're hearing from the public. So your question needs to be brought up at the next workshop session when council has that discussion, and whether we can have that discussion and we can review that policy at that time. So this is the public meeting portion. So we're hearing comments from the public, and we're going to allow those public comments to be part of our deliberations and debate at our next meeting here virtually of the council. So I get your point. I really do, because I'm interested to know that answer too. I'm just not sure we can actually put our staff on the spot in a question period during public meeting to answer that type of question. So I'm going to go right to the clerk, because she's the clerk and she put her card up. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Mr. Campbell has rejoined the meeting again.
Sure.
So if you would like me to bring him in, I can at this moment.
Sure, jump him right in there. Hopefully his internet holds. Mr. Campbell, hopefully you're still there. You don't need to turn your camera on if you want to just go ahead and speak.
Okay, that's a good idea. Believe it or not, this is Bell land, like high speed.
Excellent. Glad to hear. Carry on, Jim.
Okay, where did I get cut off?
Yeah, Mr. Patterson said you get left. Tom, go ahead. What did you say?
1/3, when you were talking about 113 signatory.
That's it.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, I'm nearly finished, just to give you some relief. Yeah, so the 113 signatories of our October letter to council, as well as other people who have contacted us, applauded the unanimous decision by council to lower the speed limit on the 10th from 124 to Poplar Side Road to 60 kilometers an hour. I updated these people this past Saturday night to the news that the funding for the required signs had been removed from the 22 budget. And as I believe you have deduced by now from the nature of the emails that you've received in the past 2 days, the residents definitely wish to see the funding for the reduced speed limit signs placed back into the budget. We believe it's really important that these signs are installed prior to the completion of the road reconstruction, that portion from 91 to 3031. Obviously, when that road is finished, it'll be very appealing for many drivers. And I think if we don't get this speed limit signs changed on either side of that section beforehand, it just creates a pattern. People just find their shortcut. They don't follow the GPS every time. They may follow the GPS 1 or 2 times, and then it's ingrained into their psyche, right? So it's been wonderful having the road closed for this last, whatever it's been, 8 months or something like that, a huge difference in the traffic pattern. And I think it's really important to take advantage of that, this pause and reinforce it by getting the new speed limit signs in place. So please, on behalf of these residents who have been waiting patiently for many years now, nearly 8 years, please include within the 22 budget funding the installation of the 60-kilometer-hour signs for concession 10 from 124 to 91 and from 3031 to Poplar Side Road. Thank you.
Great. Jim, thank you very much for your patience and trying to get in on your call here. I appreciate it. And we will take your comments back to our workshop session that council will be hosting in January, when we review all of the public comments that have been received in this meeting. And council will have the opportunity to deliberate and make further decisions on the 2021 budget. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for participating and joining us in this public meeting. And gosh, I sure hope we can get better internet in our community too one day. That'd be great. You know, I saw an announcement from the provincial government announced some money going out for that too. So we'll have to see if we can get in line for that. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right. All right, Madam Clerk, I don't, did you have anything further? I'm not sure. I think you had just the 3. Is that correct?
Thank you, Your Worship. That is correct. Only 3 oral submissions.
Okay, so council, you have the opportunity now to make any comments or questions to staff in regards to the public meeting content. And again, I advise you that again, this is not for this meeting is not for us to make comments. It's actually about the public. So if you have a question or comment about some of the content, this is a good opportunity to do that. I recognize Councillor Patterson, and then I think Mr. McKechnie. I thought I saw you. Okay, go ahead, Tom. You're up first.
Yeah, this is a question for Kelly. When you go to your last information chart, just the chart before the question chart and the allowable debt, the chart you showed, the red and blue one, please.
Kelly, could you bring up that chart you still, or is that Sasha? Who's running the carts?
I'll have to beg Sasha to pull it up for me.
There we go. Okay. Is that the one, Tom?
That's the one.
Okay, go ahead.
So for the well, for the public and ourselves as well, the top line, the allowable debt, the ARL, it's a function of our revenues.
Absolutely correct.
And is that the projected revenues that we see with the growth? I know that, well, we have a lot of approved and in draft. It appears dramatically slower growth in our revenue, which is the resultant formula for the ARL, than our debt. I'm just wondering if there might be something added. If that is, then it projects it fairly. But I suspect our taxation, our base, our revenue, base revenue will increase. I thought it would be faster than what you're showing me.
Tom, I completely agree, and I'm glad you brought that point forward. Kelly, what's your comment there on your projections?
Through your worship to Councillor Patterson. I am known as a diehard conservative. So the growth revenues are based on a 2% increase year over year. In reality, I hope that to be much higher, but this is a very conservative view of what it could look like if we stay at that even 2% increase. Again, you're 100% correct. I expect that red line to be way higher than it is when we come around, but we'll wait and see.
Just
good question.
Just in jest, if you're going to stick to your diehard projections, and I understand fiscal management enough to know what you're saying, maybe you should change the red to the blue, and the and the blue to the red. At any rate, I think it would be. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm thinking that perhaps you could show on top of the ARL limit line at least a projection number, at least at the time of budgets, so that it gives a little bit more accurate portrayal. Because it also doesn't show the lag in the impact assessments, and And I think it might promote a little bit better understanding of where our township is going. But we can discuss that at the budget meeting.
Kelly? Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure what the question was.
No, well, I
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
that. Yeah,
I
I think Tom's come up with a really good point here, particularly Tom, when you mentioned MPAC. The MPAC current numbers go to 2016. Kelly, your chart doesn't even show 2016. So that's the point about the chart that does bring the question to me, is that MPAC will be having an increase once we come out of COVID, and once they do that, there's no doubt that the values of properties are going to increase, which will then increase our actual income levels. So it's going to be difficult, that's for sure. Kelly?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Your Worship. We are frozen in 2016 dollar values. As I mentioned, for the median household in Clearview, we were at 309,000 for 2021, and I believe it's 311,000 for 2022. And I think you would be very hard pressed to find a home for that value in Clearview.
Yes.
So when it finally does sort of catch up with MPAC, they're going to have a very busy year, and there's going to be some very shocked homeowners.
Yes.
I'll be one.
I'll be one of those too, no doubt about
Yeah.
it. Tom, you got any further questions?
No, I think I look forward to our. Did you say that our workshop 3 would be around the 17th in January?
Yeah, in that neighborhood. I got to tell you, I meant to ask the clerk about that earlier, and we can have that discussion here in a minute, actually, to set that actual date if you'd like. But
Okay,
yes,
well,
it's in that neighborhood.
So that's another date for the public to keep an eye on.
Absolutely, for sure. It's staff and council will be participating in a workshop to discuss some of the public input that we've had here today. Good, thank you, Tom. Mr. McKechnie, you're next. Did anybody else? Just looking for anybody else? Okay, go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the question I have is pertains to what Karen Crevier wrote in her written statement to council. Basically, she says that the people, and I'm just going to call it in the area of the 6th Line Church, that's the area that we're dealing with, they've determined that it's going to cost $2,400 in order to put the speed limit signs along their section of road. They need 6 speed limit signs at a cost of $400 each, $2,400, and they are offering to pay for it themselves. What's the township's position on that?
Mr. CAO, would you like to answer that question?
It's a great question. We can accept donations, and we can give a tax receipt for the donation. And I think we could earmark it for something of that nature. It's still subject to council approving it, I guess. And but I think it's a novel idea. I think it's a good idea.
All right.
Okay.
Councillor.
Okay, thank you. And
Good.
my second question, can I throw another question out there?
Sure. I'm looking for yellow cards, and right now you've got the floor.
Okay. The accessibility improvements for the council chambers, $125,000 in 2022, another $50,000 in 2023. Are we going to get a look at, do we have any idea what that involves right now? How do we get those numbers? Do we have a plan?
Again, that wasn't even mentioned as part of the public meeting portion of the meeting here tonight, Councillor McKechnie. So I don't know if we can even discuss it because we're in the public meeting portion right now. But Madam Clerk, I know that it's something that is important to you to get this renovation there. So maybe you can take a little stab at it here while we're still in a public meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the rest of council. I might defer part of this to Kelly, our treasurer, just because a lot of these funds were earmarked prior to me starting with the township. I can speak to that $50,000 that we're possibly proposing for 2023. That's because we know that the construction prices obviously have gone up significantly over the last couple of years due to COVID. We kind of just were suggesting that to council because we're hoping to kind of bring an actual design to council this year and maybe look at some preliminary construction costs. We're hopeful that we might be able to do something within the budget that we have, but being realistic, we feel that there might be some overages there that we may have to look at for 2023. But I'll let Kelly speak to the funds that have already been earmarked for this project.
Good
Through your
job.
worship,
Kelly.
Councillor McKechnie, the funding for that project is actually completely by reserves. My understanding was there was an original plan, and as with everything else these days, it's a pre-COVID plan. We may have to go back to the drawing board on a lot of spots depending on the outcome of our lovely little pandemic buddy. The original renovations were to meet AODA standards and to ensure that if we happen to have a council member in need, that they would actually be able to access the council chambers. I believe the plans now have to focus on a little bit more health and safety issues as well, whether it's plexiglass. I know Sasha's working really hard right now to get the OWL cameras in. And as far as I know, we don't have a set design that accommodates both the AODA and the sort of pandemic standards.
Yeah, I can help a little bit there too, Councillor. That also is about the increase in technology requirements to move to virtual meetings like we're doing right now, or hybrid meetings in the future, where we have partially in person as well as hybrid. That technology is what we're using today, but we need to incorporate it actually in the chambers itself. So that's part of this discussion. When it was initially thought, it was, as Kelly pointed out, simply AODA renovations only is what was sort of talked about initially. So you're right. By the way, I have never seen the designs on it either, and I'm patiently waiting to see what staff and our architect have been working on. Councillor, anything further?
No.
Okay.
Actually, I've got lots, but I don't think I've got lots.
It's a public meeting portion, yeah. Okay, I'm looking for anybody else then, members of council. Anything further? Okay. If I see nothing further then, at this point, I'd like to conclude the public meeting with respect to the municipality's 2022 budget. I want to thank all members of the public who provided both their written comments as well as those that joined us in this virtual setting. And your comments will remain of interest in this matter, and they will be considered at council prior to the final passing of the budget in our January 2022 meeting, which is yet to be determined on the actual date of that. So we need to confirm that. So at this time, I'd like to now close the public meeting portion of our agenda for tonight. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Members of council, we need to go back on our agenda. Where are we at? I'll tell you what, why don't we finish off the Public Works Department section, and then we'll go back to Community Services. Fair enough? Oh, Todd, we're going to talk about PW 043 2021. It's the tender regarding winter sand. Okay, so I'll read the recommendation and I'll look for a mover and second. Recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, award the tender for winter sand supply to Darren Neal and Sons Excavating Inc. in the amount of $107,056.20, which includes HST. Is there a mover and seconder on this motion? And then we'll hear from Mr. Broderick, Mr. Lamers. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And hello, Todd. Thank you for being patient and joining us.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Do you have any comments about the tender?
Not a lot. It's a pretty straightforward tender, annual sand tender. I'd just like to recommend we have Darren Neal and Son. We've done work with them in the past. We awarded the tender, the contract. He was lower than the other two bidders. One thing I will mention is you probably see in the report, costs are up a fair bit as we would expect in a lot of things this year. It's a little more than I expected to see in this, but that's where we're at.
All right. Any questions from members of council to Todd or our staff regarding this tender? All right. I'm prepared to call the motion. Thank you, Todd. I'm prepared to call the motion. Just wondering if the deputy mayor is going to join us for the vote. All right, there he is. Hello, Deputy Mayor. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much, Todd. Appreciate your work on that. Thank you. I'm going to go back, council, to page. Where is that now? Now I got my pages mixed up here. Oh, here it is. It's on page 3, Community Services. This is CS 061. It's the proposed building permit fee bylaw revision. As you heard, there are no proposed changes, so we are in a position where we can move forward and bring this motion forward. So I'll bring it forward with the mover and seconders. Yes, Councillor Patterson, go ahead first. I know you want to speak. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yep, you get to eat from the chocolate now too. You've muted. There you go. Merry Christmas.
I was just moving the motion, or at least attempting to move the motion.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Well, I'll mark you down. Recommendation, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, receive this report for information, and item 2, approve the proposed recommendations to not increase building permit fees by the annual indexing as set out in the building permit fee Schedule B to bylaw 1693 as amended for the year 2022. That'll be moved by Councillor Patterson. I have it seconded. Councillor Deneen. Excellent. Is there any questions? All right. Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries. Excellent. All right. So going back down on our agenda, we're going to legislative services at the bottom of page 5. And this one is the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement. We did have a very good workshop, council, special meeting, and we now have the results of that. So I have the motion here in front of me, and I'll read it and look for a mover and seconder. Recommendation, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, receive report LS 019-2021, the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement dated December 13, 2021. And item 2, endorse the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Statement for the Township of Clearview as presented in this report. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Mr. Broderick, Mr. Walker. Excellent. Is there any questions of our staff? It was a very good report. Kayla has joined us. I'm sure someone has a question for Kayla. Hello, Kayla. Nice to see you, and thank you for your work on this and your report, both in the workshop. That was a great workshop. Just throw that comment out there, and thank you for reviewing the content of the workshop in your report. Would you like to say anything, Kayla? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that today we're bringing a report requesting that Council consider endorsing a Indigenous land acknowledgement for township purposes. Historically, as you now know, the Indigenous land acknowledgements were typically used at the beginning of gatherings, ceremonies, and events to give thanks, appreciation, and respect for all in creation, including their ancestors, communities, other beings, clans, allied nations, and Mother Earth. For non-Indigenous Canadians moving towards implementing this teaching, it's also about public acknowledgement of this respect towards and recognition of the Indigenous peoples, practices, and ways of knowing. A township endorsed land acknowledgement provides a basis for council, boards and committees, and local community groups to formally identify the traditional caretakers and stewards of the land, and through meaningful recognition, provide confirmation that Clearview is open to better understanding the truths of the past and are dedicated to improving Indigenous relationships and municipal governance of Clearview Township into the future. The recommendation to endorse an Indigenous land acknowledgement is not meant to be a mandatory component added to all meeting agendas, ceremonies, events for councils or its respective boards, committees, but rather a basis or starting point should a local board or committee or community group wish to incorporate an Indigenous land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Kayla. Appreciate that. And again, thank you for all the work you've done on this. Members of council, do you have any questions to Kayla, our clerk, CAO, in regards to this work that we've been doing? No? If I can ask, Tom, did you have a question?
No, I was just, good
Okay,
job.
Thank you. Good job. If I can ask the clerk to join us, I just wanted to clarify the point in the report about sharing this information with members of our committees and our committee chairs. So, Madam Clerk, I guess the intention would be to communicate with all of the volunteers and advise them that this is a land acknowledgement to text that we've endorsed if we pass this. And so, what's your hope with our volunteers with this?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the rest of council. It's great that Kayla's been working on this project. She's also our committee and board coordinator, so she has a direct link to all of our council committees and boards. So I know she's going to send a follow-up email to our committee and board chairs advising of if council wishes to endorse it at tonight's meeting. And then I'm sure there'll be a follow-up at their next meetings in the new year just to discuss it. But as Kayla said, it's not going to be something that's mandatory. We encourage people to use it, maybe add their own anecdotal information to it. But we want people to feel comfortable using the statement. And as Kayla stated, external organizations as well in the township. I know Kayla's working with our communications coordinator of having a page on our website outlining our statement that we do have on there, resources that we learned during our education session, and a lot of the historical background that we've received from community members as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Well, I want to just acknowledge that this has been quite a project, and I want to thank. Oh, Mr. McKechnie, did you have a question? I saw your card quickly.
Just one question, Your Worship. So something that Sasha said there just sort of tweaked the question to me.
Sure, go ahead.
So are the committees going to be allowed to modify it at all? You said that they can make additions or something. Is that right? So
Madam
can they
Clerk?
modify the
Through you, Mayor Measures, to Councillor McKechnie and the rest of Council, as Kayla stated throughout her presentation and in her report, land acknowledgements can be very personal as well. So we don't want to limit people in what they say in their statement. They may have a personal story that they want to share at the beginning, and we don't want to limit people for not sharing those stories. We want it to be personal to the people, but we want our statement to be a starting point. It's factual, but it's a living document. As we learn, we may add more information as we go with some approval from council.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I was just going to mention, if there's unless none of the members of council have any questions. I've used it a couple times, statement that I prepared. I appreciate what we've just heard, that we can sort of amend it or change it if it's suitable to the individual person. The person who speaks it is the person who, you know, has the opportunity to speak it in the way that they want it to be presented, and to be truthful to the Truth and Reconciliation opportunity here that's being presented to us. So I just wanted to point that out, that the one that I've been using is just a little bit different than what we have written in the text on the report, and I'm comfortable with both. I'm just letting you know that I appreciate that they can be a little bit different as long as they remain factual and remain respectful. So again, that's great. All right, members of council, nothing further? You've heard the, thank you very much to staff, all staff who prepared this, and you've heard the motion, so I'm prepared to call the motion. Those in favor? And that carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Well done, staff. Thank you to the members of public who brought this forward, by the way. Appreciate that too. All right, council. On our agenda, we are now going to talk with council, or with our staff clerk, in regards to updated council agenda format. So I'll read this just to get it on the floor, and I'm sure Ms. Helmke has a few things to say. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township Clearview hereby one, receive report LS 020-2021. It's the updated council agenda format dated December 13, 2021 for information. Mover and seconder for on the floor, Mr. Broderick and Mr. Walker. Thank you. Okay, Sasha, tell us what you think and why you brought this forward.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the rest of council. It's kind of a little bit of an update, so council wasn't surprised in the new year when you saw a different formatted agenda in our minutes as well. We had an opportunity this fall and even in the summer to kind of review some of our templates, including our council reports as well. And we saw that there was some room for improvement in regards to accessibility. Specifically, we've been using capitalized words in a lot of our agendas to identify headings. We haven't been using proper heading formatting in Word that helps with screen readers when we PDF the document. So we just wanted to make our council agendas a little bit more accessible for the public and for council. There's always room for improvement, but we also did a little bit of reformatting in colors as well. So I just wanted to notify council and the public that that's why you're going to see a change at the beginning of the new year.
Okay. Is there any questions? Thank you, Sasha, for that, and appreciate you keeping an eye on it. Anybody with any questions? Any questions to Sasha? All right. If I can take us back to the just previous motion, Sasha, would you be including just an item on the agenda right before approval of the agenda to indicate Indigenous land acknowledgement? Is that going to be sort of written on the agenda?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Currently, we don't have that included in our procedure bylaw, but we can have it written at the beginning just to highlight to members of the public and council that we do have a statement that's been endorsed by council. So that's something that I could definitely do without having an amendment to the procedure bylaw, knowing that we are going to go through that process in the new year anyways. So
Sure. So maybe you could just add it without a number and just put it in here as a bolded item, and then that way it's included. Fair enough?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. Members of council, any further questions? Nothing? All right. I'm prepared to call the motion then. All those in favor? And that carries unanimous again. Thank you very much. Council, we're going to move on to our bylaws. We've got a group of them here to get to. So I'll read some bylaws and we'll look for movers and seconders. Bylaw number 21-118, the zoning bylaw amendment regarding the lifting of hold on 7685 County Road 9. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 21-118 being a bylaw to regulate the use of land and the character, location, and use of buildings and structures on lands municipally known as 7685 County Road 9 be presented over the first, second, and third time. Finally passed on the 13th day of December 2021. A mover and seconder on the bylaw. Mr. Broderick, Mr. Lamers, thank you. All those in favor? And the bylaw carries. Thank you. 21-119 is the site plan agreement and regarding the same property. So recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 21-119 being a bylaw to authorize entering into a site plan agreement with 7685 County Road number 9 Inc. be presented and read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on the 13th day of December 2021. Mover and seconder. Mr. Patterson, Ms. Deneen. Thank you, Councillor Deneen. Any questions? All those in favor? Bylaw carries. Thank you very much. All right. This is the building permit fees where there's no change, but we have to update the bylaw. Recommendation, be it resolved, bylaw 21-121 being a bylaw to amend Schedule 1 of the fees and charges bylaw 17-110. Be presented and read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on the 13th day of December 2021. Mover and seconder on this bylaw. Mr. Walker, Mr. Burton. Thank you. Mr. Walker, Mr. Burton. And no questions. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And the bylaw carries. Thank you. Amending fees and charges for Schedule K cemetery fees. Before I read it, there is an explanatory note attached regarding the cemetery fees and charges. And I'm not sure if Ms. Helmke wanted to mention anything or if there's any questions to her regarding the explanatory note. No questions? All right, Madam Clerk, nothing? I'm just looking to see if anybody has any questions. Thank you. All right, then I'll read the bylaw. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 21-121 being a bylaw to amend Schedule K of the fees and charges bylaw 17-110 be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed on the 13th day of December 2021. A mover and seconder on the bylaw. Ms. Deneen, Mr. Broderick. Thank you, Councillor Deneen, Councillor Broderick. And seeing no questions, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And the bylaw carries. Thank you very much. All right, Council, we're right down to notices of motion, new business. We're also at bylaw to confirm the proceedings. I will go to the bylaw to confirm recommendation. Be it resolved, bylaw 21-120 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the December 18, 2021 council. Be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed on the 13th day of December 2021. Mover and seconder on the confirmatory bylaw. Mr. Lamers, Ms. Deneen. Council, you've heard the bylaw. All those in favor? And the confirmatory bylaw carries. Council, before I read the notice or the motion to adjourn, I just want to acknowledge that this is our last scheduled meeting for 2021. We are moving into 2022, which is yet again another repeat of COVID restrictions, and it's our great hope that COVID restrictions will be changing, as I've said earlier, every 20 minutes to the point that we can get our municipality fully up and running. I know that I've spoken to the CAO. It's his intention to open up the township office in the new year for extended hours as compared to what we have now. I know it's our intention as a council. We've been working with the clerk to try to find opportunity for council to meet in person or in a hybrid form in the new year. I wouldn't say it's going to be January, but I'm going to say it's sooner than later. And one other thing I want to mention is that council, I would ask you to consider giving us some room on your schedules to have us have a strategic planning session, which will be a special meeting of council to discuss our strategic plan, as it's been the procedure of council in the past to sort of review the strategic plan for the community once every term. So it's an opportunity for us to do that. So perhaps some of your great reading material over the holiday break is to take another look at the strategic plan and see what it could be changed or how it could be updated. And we will, of course, be asking the public for some input on that as well. So that's one of the special meetings that's coming up. And I look forward to that. We will work with the clerk, and we will try to communicate to each member of council about any special meetings coming up. I know that our great assistant, Jen Kane Percy, is very good at contacting each of you to try to arrange any sort of special meetings. And I hope that she will continue to be able to do that into the new year. And so as we go into the new year, I want to acknowledge the persons that are going to be keeping our community safe and operating over this holiday season. We have many of our public works employees will be working over the holiday break. We also have, of course, our fire department, police department, and our paramedics that are going to be serving our community during this break, and those that work at the hospital. So there's a whole lot of essential workers that continue to serve our community, even while the rest of us are, taking some type of Christmas or holiday break with our families. So before I read the motion to adjourn, I thought I'd take this opportunity, since we did just pass the land acknowledgement, that I'd read that here at the end of this meeting to end our 2021 year. So I'd like to conclude our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards and caretakers of the land. We acknowledge that Clearview Township is located within the boundaries of Treaty 18, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Titatanati, the Wendat, and it is the home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples as part of the intricate nationhood that reaches across Turtle Island. At this time of truth and reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity to work together towards new understandings and new relationships, and ask for guidance in all that we do. Look forward to hearing more of that in the future. Thank you, members of council. I'm going to ask for the motion to adjourn, that this council meeting be adjourned at 8:04. Is that correct? 8:04 p.m. Unless there's anything further, I'll look for a mover and seconder on the motion to adjourn. Deneen and McKechnie. Thank you very much, councillors. All those in favor? And that carries. Very Merry Christmas to you all, and thank you all. Have a wonderful break. I look forward to seeing you all again soon.